That's what we want. There you go. You guys are chill. Get that little okay for the recording thing. But we're going to go ahead and get started because this week we have a lot of discussion when it comes to our case. And so I want us to be able to spend lots of time because there's lots of rabbit holes that are all significant that we can jump down. And I love having the discussion. So I want to make sure we spend as much time there. I also want to say thank you for your patience and understanding last week. I literally could not get the work laptop to connect to anything. I had started in our office in Council Grove. I couldn't get it to work there, couldn't get it to work at the Junction City office, couldn't get it to work at home. So I couldn't access anything, and I cannot bring my desktop from work here. And they're doing, when all the storms came through, there's a constant beeping noise in my office that you all would hear because other people have heard it, and it gives a lot of people a headache, including me. So it was not a good week. It was one thing after another. So thank you for your patience and understanding. All right. We're going to go ahead. And first thing I want to do is we're going to get into something, and it's going to be really heavy right off the top. I do want to say that if you need to kind of like mute your computer or walk away for a minute, I totally get it. One of the things that some of you may have heard this before, sometimes I'll occasionally run across someone. Sometimes I'll be honest, I've heard this many, many times, but sometimes it affects me and sometimes it affects, well, sometimes it affects me more and sometimes it affects me less. So don't be ashamed if you need to kind of like mute or walk away or anything like that. Because we are going to start talking about domestic violence. I loved reading your comments in response to the video that was part of the pre-work of why women stay. It's also one of those things that I want to always be aware of. That's not a question we want to ask. We don't want to ask, why did you stay? Why did you leave? Anything that, especially in a situation like that, that could be at all construed as judgmental. And what I will tell you is, in working with the children as long as I have, and working with families with domestic violence even longer than I've been with the CASA program,
Wow.
I will tell you that and share with you that even saying something that you think is non-judgmental could be construed in the wrong way because you may not understand it. But remember, some of the people that have been victims of domestic violence or survivors of domestic violence or people that are suffering through domestic violence or have in the past, they've been taught to hear the same things that we hear in a different way that is going to be negative in their mind, tearing them down. So we always want to be with the children, with the family, very, very careful. And again, I know I said it, but I want to make sure that we're all aware. There's a lot of times where it's just not male versus female. It is female versus male. It's male versus male. It's child versus parent. I have literally seen child needed care cases where it has been domestic violence where the child was the batterer and the parents were the sufferers. So I don't want us to come at this with any kind of preconceived notions of what's going on. So we're going to start. One of the things that is really big is the impact of domestic violence. These children from homes where domestic violence is or was prevalent, 6 times more likely to commit suicide, 50 times more likely to abuse drugs and alcohol, 74 times more likely to commit violent crimes against another person. One of the things I want you to consider in that 74 times is not that they become these violent aggressors that go out and commit violent crimes. Like we have that stereotypical criminal in our brains from television and movies and things. I want you to think about someone who's on that razor's edge. Do you remember that feelings thermometer that we have? They're red hot, man. They are like anything happens and it's going to trip them up, right? And so what they may perceive as a threat may not be a threat, just like what they perceive as a judgment may not be what you meant your words to be. And so they will go, and a lot of times the violence they commit is against someone where they have a perceived threat, or they finally get to the point mentally where they feel like they're capable of fighting back. And so those are some of the violent crimes. You hear about the domestic violence sufferer who went through years and years and years, and then all of a sudden, pick lethal weapon of choice, insert here, and goes after the batterer. And if it's a gun, instead of shooting them once, they shoot them like 15 times. Instead of stabbing them once with a knife, they stab them, a bunch more times, or they push with more force. And then it starts to get into, in the legal side and the criminal side, well, was it too much force? And it's really because they're on that edge. And so when they lash out, a lot of times those crimes of self-defense are also in that 74 times. So, okay. Again, I gave you your warning. This may be hard to listen to. It is an actual 911 call. It is the actual call that has been recorded. I can give you some of an update after.
September 21st, 1991, time 22:13 hours. This will be a 911 call, position CT07.
Standing emergency. What's the standing emergency?
My mommy and Daddy are having a fight.
Is he hitting her?
What? I'm talking to the police, Mommy. Stop it! Mommy! Stop it! Don't take the baby! Stop it! You're gonna hurt the baby! Stop it! Could you just send the police, please?
Okay, we're going to be there. Who's taking your baby?
Stop it! No! Drea, shut up!
Let me talk to you. Where's your mom?
What?
What's going on?
They're having a fight because this has been going on forever and ever. They always have this because he has a cousin. He's always drinking beer and getting drunk. And Mom.
What's his name? What is his name? Your father's name?
Pierre.
Pierre?
Yeah.
What's his last name?
I don't know, but I think his
Is
name.
he white, black, or Hispanic?
He's black.
He's your father?
He's my stepfather.
Okay, how old is he?
I don't know.
Does he have any weapons?
No. But he's hurting Mommy.
How's he hurting her?
He made his Mommy.
Okay, don't cry. We're going to send the police.
Okay.
Okay, now where's your mother at right now?
She's in the room fighting with them.
Do you have a little baby sister?
No, I got baby brother.
Is he trying to take your baby brother?
Baby.
And he's trying to take your baby?
Yeah, because Mama's not drunk. He thinks he's drunk because he can't say nothing because he's drunk. My stepdaddy's drunk.
Are they in a room fighting? Where are they at now?
They're in the room still.
They're in the bedroom?
Yeah, I don't want him to do nothing strange with the baby because if they drop, he's a newborn baby. He's very delicate.
What do you mean do anything strange? What do you think he's going to do to your baby?
I think he's going to take the baby and do something because he's drunk. He might not see the baby and go off without the baby if he takes it.
How old are you?
I'm 6 and my little sister's 4.
You're 6-year-old? You're 6?
Yeah, I'm in first grade. My sister's in kindergarten.
Okay, what is your name? What is your name?
Lisa. My sister's name is Drea. Excuse me.
You only... Okay.
Okay, could you just send the police?
Yeah, they're on their way, but I'm going to keep you on the line until they get there, okay? Is your front door open?
Oh, no.
Can you go unlock it and come back to the phone so the officers can get in?
Just wait, please.
Okay. What sister that he knocked out?
My little sister.
Your
The 4-year-old.
What do you mean he knocked her off?
He pushed her down on the floor. And she cried. I wish she would stop doing this. Ever since she had him, Pierre just slapped Mommy.
Which room are they in?
My mom's name is Cindy.
Okay, which room are they in?
They're in, their room.
They're in the back room or the bedroom?
The back. Oh my God!
What's the matter?
Something happened! Just please let the police. Wait, I want to go see what happened, please.
Okay, the police are on their way, okay? Hello? Lisa?
My stepdaddy's got the baby now.
He has the baby now? Where is he at now?
What?
Lisa, where is he at right now? Is he
He's
still in the
still
house?
in the room and got the baby.
Okay.
And he made some red marks on Mama's, on Mama's neck.
He did what?
He made some red marks on Mama's.
Where did he make the red marks on with her
On
neck?
her neck. On the right side. Very dark. Okay, my mom's going outside. Mama, go! The police are coming.
Is your mother? Hello? Shit.
Okay. I think just take a second. Then I'm going to do my typical thoughts, reactions, questions. When you're at a point that you can respond.
Well, when did they get there? How long did it take them to get there?
So we don't know exactly how long, but we know it was pretty soon. I can tell you that they did get there and everybody is safe. So from that standpoint, the call took place. In fact, that's what I did. So, to distract myself, sometimes I'll look something up. And one of the things I did look up is the actual call was from September 21st, 1991.
So that child was, did she say she was 6?
It was 6 in 1991. So she would have been born in 85-ish.
So what's she doing now?
Let's get to the good news first. Well, her story is a little bumpy. They were removed from the home. Mom got them back. Mom's habits didn't change. She stuck with remained in other domestic violence abusive situations, which is not uncommon, really not. Lisa got out of the house and then ended up marrying a man who was also had a drinking problem and then became abusive to their 2 children. When she realized when the police were, one of her own children called the police, she realized, in her own words, if you've read some of her responses, she's like, I didn't leave. I left for my kids, not for myself. I left because my husband was changing them. I realize now I gave myself the greatest gift, which is self-love. For if you love yourself, there's no man or woman who can take that from you. So she was able to get out, and now she advocates for, and will often speak at domestic violence shelters. She has a lot to do with the National Domestic Violence organizations and different things like that that support it. So, I mean, in the end, happy story, happy ending, not the smoothest path to get there. Was there anything about the phone call that struck anybody?
She seemed a lot older than 6.
Very much so. And that is not uncommon with the children that we serve. These children may seem much older than their actual chronological age, especially a 6-year-old who takes care of a 4-year-old and a newborn baby.
Right. And in 91, they knew from the phone what the address was, but nowadays the cell phones do not tell them the address. You have to tell them the address.
Yeah. They can usually get fairly close in some places in the country they can. But no, when we as a culture went from, and I'm one of the ones, people would change and get a new cell phone every time we transferred from one military base to another. So you had a local number. But when we really left those home phones away and walked away from them and went cell only, and then because we did that, we didn't change our number as much because the new number is, it became much more difficult. You know, I have a Georgia area code on my cell phone, on my personal cell phone number. I've had that personal cell phone number. I don't even want to think about it, but probably 30 years now, I've had this particular number. I kept my cell phone number the same, even when I still had a house phone for a long time, and that would change. So yes, it does complicate things. There are ways that can try and triangulate and do different things, especially when they keep you on the line, because it does run certain things. But yes, it would be much more challenging now. Did anybody else catch how I look for moments of smiles during this one. You had to know that her mama or someone told her that newborn babies are very delicate, because that was very important. It's probably something she heard more than once. But yeah, she was very much the adult in the entire situation, taking care of her 4-year-old sister, the newborn baby. She was not even calling because her mom was getting hurt. She was calling because she was worried about the baby. Yes, she was also calling because her mom was getting hurt. But her real thing was the baby, the safety of the baby. So it could happen like that. I know for a lot of people that listen, it is a very hard listen. And so I try to give you a minute and then just we're going to flip to the next slide, which is going to try and talk about some facts and kind of redo our heads just a little bit so that we can get in mind to talk about our case study in a minute or two. Here's the thing. I don't know that any of us were 100% unaffected by listening to that call from 1991. It is why it's even more powerful for these kids who are witnessing this, and not just as a one-time thing where they could walk away or pause or silence the computer or make it stop. Or when I'm reading a case file and I can kind of put the case file up and walk away for a while and get my head straight. They don't always know to do that, and they don't have control, and they see it much more than we do. So one of the things that we always want to do when there's a domestic violence, if we find there's to be domestic violence, or we know there's domestic violence in the home, for instance, it might have been a domestic violence call that started the case, in which case we know we've got an incident at least. If it has not already been ordered, one of the biggest recommendations is a domestic violence assessment. And it is an assessment. And I know I said this in training, and I know I'm repeating myself. Sometimes I do that just because I really want to emphasize a couple things. Excuse me. I tried to eat supper really quick before everybody, so now my throat's getting dry. One of the things that we want to consider is that domestic violence assessment. It will help us learn who is the batterer, who's the aggressor, who's the sufferer, otherwise known as the victim in some and some things. And parents, the only thing that I have ever had is a parent be reluctant who is the sufferer, and they were like, well, why do I have to take it? It's the other parent that was the aggressor. And I'm just using our language. And what we always help them understand is, hey, look, the reason why the judge orders this is because it will help determine that who's the aggressor in the situation, who's the sufferer in the situation. And then it also helps them customize the therapies and the types of therapies that can be ordered. So you might have a domestic violence assessment and they might do anger management. You might have a domestic violence assessment and they might say, nope, don't think anger management's the way we need to go. We need to go with this much more intensive type of therapy or a different type of therapy. The same thing goes for the sufferer. There could be different things. Now, what I will also tell you is when I first started to facilitate these in 2015, I was thinking, okay, we got one of one and one of the other. And then I did not personally have the case, but there was a case that we were involved with as a program where mom and dad were both. Sometimes dad was the aggressor and mom was the sufferer. And sometimes mom was the aggressor and dad was the sufferer. And boy, was that domestic violence assessment helpful in us determining that, because then we were able to go, okay, we need both parts of the therapy in order for this family to be able to be reunited and safe. So, there's always some things that you're going to want to do. Like if you're approaching a first interview with Lisa, and I've kind of got these listed things that you're going to want to think about, barriers to interviewing a 6-year-old. I imagine if we sat down with Lisa, she's going to be very articulate for her age. She was super polite. But this is also typically where the barrier that you have to overcome is the lie. Oh, no, that doesn't happen. It was a one-time thing. No, there was just a lot going on. It was a one-time thing. It's only happened a couple of times. It's when he's already working, and I should have, and I am putting the he in this, and then I'll switch now and I'll be like, well, she only hits me when she's really stressed at work and this is going on, and I should have remembered to pick up her . And so one of the barriers that you have to overcome is that sense of shame and that sense of the fact that they have been mentally controlled for a while. And so they honestly believe it's their fault. And that's really hard. That's going to take some therapy, which is why we want to have that assessment. Okay. Anybody else have anything they want to say with regard to the domestic violence section or that phone call or anything in particular? All right, you ready to dig in? So what I'm going to say is the Amarillo case. It is probably one of my favorite and least favorite cases at the same time. I will tell you, there's a couple of things in here that trigger me. Not from, not necessarily because of the act that we're going to read or what specifically happened or anything like that. But when we get there, I think it will become obvious and we can kind of chat about it. But this case, so much we can get into because there's so many different things that we can look at. All right, as a reminder, I'm going to kind of briefly go through where we are with the case. Now, this is this case study assumes that the case has been going on a while before you've been assigned, which can happen. Sometimes you'll have a case that's been going on for a while first. And so they like to bring us at different points in the case to help us understand how we would approach it. So you're going to read through the file and you're going to say that 3 years ago on July 3rd, The neighbor called the police as a result of loud shouting in the home of Jose and Miriam Amarillo. Police found the parents too inebriated to provide a safe home for children. Mom had bruises and bleeding as a result of a physical altercation with her husband. 3 children, whose ages at the time were Maria, 13, Joanna, 3, and Graciela, 1, were at very first placed together in an emergency foster care, but later they were placed in separate homes. Now, what I will going to do, freeze frame right here for a second. It is not uncommon when you have a 13-year-old, a 3-year-old, and a 1-year-old for them to have to be placed in a different home. A lot of foster homes do say, hey, I'll take kids 10 and up or 12 and older, because they're going to focus more on the teenager end of things, right? And then you'll have some that are like, let me have like the preschool elementaries, and then some that let me have the infants. And there's very rarely a home that has a spot for a 1-year-old, which would be considered still an infant, a 3-year-old, so you're a toddler, and a 13-year-old with a teenager, because they are all going to require different things in the foster home. So that is going to be rare that you will find a place that will take all 3 of them and keep them all together. Usually that initial police protective custody, they can find someone, because it's a short term, they won't have the same requirements. Okay. Continuing on with our background of the Amarillo case. That was July 3rd. So just September 17th of 3 years ago. This is where I have to do math in my head at the worst point part of the day. So 2 months into the case, roughly speaking, 2.5 months into the case, the parents were advised that they needed to attend a substance abuse treatment program. Let me put that in court speak. The judge ordered the parents to attend a substance abuse treatment program, probably because they had that drug and alcohol assessment and they didn't do so well. And that was probably one of the recommendations coming out of those assessments. Mr. Amarillo was ordered to attend domestic violence program. Mrs. Amarillo was ordered to attend a domestic violence survivors program. So in this case, they determined through the domestic violence assessment that the husband was the aggressor and the wife was the sufferer or the victim. Just to throw that term in there, because most people are more comfortable with that term. Joanna was placed in the same foster home as Graciela, but Maria remained in a group home placement. All right, I'm going to step away from this for a second. It is really not uncommon for there not to be enough homes that take in teenagers. Therefore, having the teenagers placed in a group home is not uncommon at all. Unfortunately, it is not placement that we really want any of our teens to go to, but it is unfortunately the reality of the situation. Okay, back to the review. So May 3 years ago. So we're talking 10 months into the case now, roughly speaking, because it started on July 3rd. So we would be the next year. So May 3rd, 3 years ago. Joanna and Graciela Amarillo have been placed in a new foster setting. The foster family was willing to serve as a placement for Maria. However, during this time, Maria has also had many episodes of running away from foster families that she was placed with. Maria has also been placed in transitional housing for teenage girls. That's the group home type of situation, or transition means that it's a very short term, might be a night, might be a couple of nights. The department has filed a petition to terminate parental rights as parents did not comply with court-ordered services. So we're 10 months in, and they're going to start that termination of parental rights. If parents aren't participating at all, there's not much they can do by holding the case open, and then they're denying the girl's permanency. Okay. So August 9th, 2 years ago, so we would be 13 months into the case, parental rights were actually terminated. And then September 26th, 2 years ago, so 14 and a half, almost 15 months into the case, Maria was finally able to be placed in the same foster home as her younger children, or as her younger sisters. Sorry. End of the day. End of the day. All right. So here is where we're going to go. If you all will go ahead. Oh, I lost that. Oh, it's been a day. It's been a day. It's been a day. All right. I am now going to go. If you will pull out your interactive Amarillo case file, that would be the one that I asked you to print or have to the side for us to go over. I'm going to pull it up. And you should see it in my window. Let's go ahead and move this. I can't even remember how I did that. There we go. All right. There we go. All right. So you should be able to see that. I'm going to play with the size a little bit. Nope. No, I'm not. Okay. And what I will tell you is now is where you all get to decide. I know you haven't done that in a couple of weeks, but you're going to decide who you're going to go to first. Allow me to give you your options. These are some of the options. This is one of the ones we're going to actually talk to everybody on the list at some point. Okay, so we could talk to the caseworker. We can talk to Maria. We can talk to her school guidance counselor. We could potentially even talk to the foster parents. Who would we like to speak to first?
The caseworker.
Anybody else? The case. Alex is with you on the caseworker. Anybody else want someone other than the caseworker? All right. All right. Well, we will then go see the caseworker. And I don't know what the heck I did. There we go. All right. So, all right. This is this page. If you are reading it on the screen, if I need to adjust it, please let me know. But everybody go ahead, read this and then stop.
This is the same thing you've had up, right?
Yep.
Oh,
This is
okay.
the caseworker.
I have a question.
Yes.
The parents, their rights were severed.
Correct.
Okay, so these kids are still in foster care, but they could be adopted.
Potentially, yes.
Okay.
And what, the Valdez family is their foster parents?
No, we'll chat
Who are
about
the
that in a sec.
The
They are
Valdez,
a kinship, non-related kin, well, non-related kin as far as we know right now.
what do you mean non-related kin?
So when you were growing up with some of your parents, really, really like best friends, did you call them aunt or uncle? Like
Oh,
they were
okay.
like second parents, kind of. They were always there. They were part of the family. They would be there on the intimate, not just the when you had everybody in, but like those intimate family gatherings. They would be considered kin, but they're not blood related. You guys started with the caseworker. Almost everybody starts with Maria, so it's okay. All right, reactions, thoughts, concerns, other questions.
Well, who are the Beckers?
The Beckers are the placement.
They're the foster parents.
Oh, okay.
I had a thought of, I was reading and it says Maria's aunt needs her to come and live there for help, like to help her.
Yep.
My thought with that is, now why do you really want her? Do you want her to put her to work? Or if she has younger children, to take care of her younger children, or whatever it is, like whatever. So my thought is, why do you really want her? Do you want her for her well-being, or for because it's beneficial to you?
I agree 100%, Nashawn. That is definitely something that as a custodian advocate, we are going to want to consider and look at and find out about, because
But the other thing too is if she's going to be illegal at 18, which is only 2 years away, more than likely she's not going to get adopted. So how fair is that to her too? What happens to her then at 18?
okay.
Beth, this is a question I don't know the answer to. Can you, I know that people who aren't citizens of the United States obviously go to college here. If she were to create some sort of a plan to go to a 4-year university, like with the kind of placement that she's here with, is that something that can happen?
Okay. I'm going to put that on pause before I answer your question.
Okay.
Did anybody else have any other reactions or questions? Okay, so this is the one. This caseworker irks me. When I was talking about like some of the things, like this caseworker irks me. Allow me to show you why. A second to last paragraph. This case has been open way too long. With the state's budget as it is right now, we're looking to get resolution on some of these lingering cases. We want to close that as quickly as possible. That's what I plan to do. Okay, wait. I'm sorry. These are not cases. These are children. If I could reach through the screen and give that mom talk to somebody that, you know, or the dad talk we've given to children before. Yes. That irritates me. The fact is there's a lot more that we can talk about with this. So we're gonna do it out. Everybody, you're the first group to ever pick the caseworker first instead of Maria. It's all good. It's all good. All right. So here's what I would say. First of all, the other thing, you're going to hear me be really bratty right now, or maybe some other word that you find. I don't care that the caseworker was only assigned a month ago. Nothing has been done in the 3 years of this case. Here's the thing. It talks in this about SIJS. That stands for Special Immigrant Juvenile Status. Okay? SIJS. Special Immigrant Juvenile Status. What that is if we have a child that is in care, or a child needed care in the state of Kansas or elsewhere in the country, they can get, if they were brought here, if they're undocumented, okay, let's put it that way, and they're currently here in the country but then they're put in foster care while they are undocumented, they automatically get special immigrant juvenile status, which means they get a special attorney, they get an immigration attorney, and the court also needs to, if they want, they're asked, depending on the age, it looks at, do we want to try and get legal status for this child? If we have a child that's 13, she's basically lived here her whole life. They came here. I don't know if you caught that, but Maria has diabetes, and she had an older brother that died in El Salvador because his diabetes was untreated, which is why we can believe that potentially why they brought the family to the US. Okay. So that lawyer would then help deal with immigration issues and try and get documentation. It takes a while, but it's a faster process. Maria could also potentially try to apply for US citizenship. First, she would have to have documentation, but she could potentially apply for US citizenship. Now, many states will also allow her time that she has been here in school, and that they can tell that she's been in public schools, etc., to count towards that citizenship. And she would be in really good position because she would have gone through the US school and learned the US history and know a lot about citizenship, so really wouldn't be hard. So the fact that the previous worker and this one isn't trying to get documentation for Maria makes me cranky.
Documentation of how long she's been here, a birth
Green
certificate.
card.
Talking about
A green card. Yep.
You mean they're not trying? She doesn't have a green card.
She doesn't have a green card. She's
And when did we find out she was undocumented? When did we find that?
day one of the case. It should have been in, you guys, I gave you a thing that you could read that was in there.
Oh, maybe.
But I will tell you, she's, well, and even in this, we find out that they knew that she was undocumented. So it's even in this caseworker report that she's undocumented. They've known that she's undocumented. That's their job.
Yes, that's stupid. They should have been on that right away.
Hence the reason why this one makes me cranky. But I love it because I love the story because there's so many things we get to talk about, like SIJS. We have had a couple of cases. We had one child who was, and I'm going to try really hard not to be political in all of this. So please, if you hear a tinge of politics, know that it might not even represent how I actually feel or think. But we had a biological uncle basically kidnap his child from a Central American country, smuggled the child over the border into the US, was out in the Virginia area, and was sex trafficking. She had been in the country for 2 or 3 years, and they ended up having a traffic stop in one of my counties, just off the interstate. And then they realized that she was being sex trafficked, and she was like 11 or 12-ish at the time. Okay. So we actually had to, she really wanted to just stay in the country. She didn't want to go back because she kept telling the judge that if she went back, her uncle would only grab her again. And so what ended up happening is the judge is like, okay, fine, we will do the SIJS. They got an immigration lawyer. The immigration lawyer would give us updates. The Sink case, we just tried, we could not work reintegration with her uncle. First of all, it was her uncle, not her parents. Her parents, we couldn't get a hold of in Central America. And so she was basically by herself. At this point, we could not work reintegration. So that's one of those times where we did a dual case plan that I've talked about before, where you're kind of working more than one option at the same time. We worked reintegration and kind of independent living / adoption on the other side. She was able to get documentation. She was able to get her green card and stay. And then she went into the adoption system where she could potentially be adopted, but there was lots of therapy and lots of things that we needed to do because she had been sex trafficked for a couple of years by a biological uncle. So that was our one of the things that SIJS, and that's one of the reasons why I'm very familiar with how the process goes. In addition, we've had another case in my program a few years ago. And in that case, mom was a US citizen. Maternal grandparents, mom's parents, dad was born and raised in the US in the Southeast, but mom was still a technical citizen of Mexico. However, mom had been in the US for something like 30, 35 years. She had her green card the whole time. So she's what we would call documented. But dad, the child's biological father, was undocumented. He was here illegally. He didn't have a green card. I'm saying the same thing in a lot of ways. The way that they have us refer to it now is undocumented, but like he didn't have a green card. He did not legally enter the country. Just trying to make it clear. So he didn't have it. He didn't have any kind of documentation. So what we ended up doing is at first we were going to try, mom was not going to be a reintegration option. Mom did not have mom had the mind of an 8-year-old child. So mom could not truly provide an adult relationship, an adult-child relationship. However, she did love her child. And so one of the things we had originally looked at was reintegrating because we couldn't even find dad and we couldn't locate him. We looked at reintegrating with the maternal grandparents. The idea being that we had to get a guardian ad litem for mom because mom couldn't make the decisions. And one of the things we were looking at is could we make them the legal guardians, so to speak, of the child, so they would have the legal say. That way mom and child could be reunited. You were still in the family. We're trying to work this out. But one of the things that we ran into was in this process, maternal grandmother had to renew her green card. I don't know, but it takes a really long time for that to happen. It took close to 1.5 years-ish, 1 year and 9 months. And during that time, we were able to find dad. And then we had to potentially work a reintegration plan with dad as well while we were waiting for everything to go with mom. Now, what happened in that plan is dad was in Texas and we reached out and had help in Texas getting, helping dad get his green card. And then actually in the end, under all the circumstances, there's more to the story that you'll hear later. But we were able to reintegrate with dad and we started reintegration while he was undocumented. So, but one of the steps he had to do was get his green card. So, so when it says that you can't give custody to undocumented immigrants, well, no, you can't. But sometimes the case plan becomes helping them get their green card so that they can take custody. Okay. Let's go to the next one. Lots of discussion on that one. Would we like to speak with Maria, the guidance counselor, the foster parents, the maternal aunt?
Maria.
Okay. Anybody else?
Yeah, Maria.
Okay. So we're gonna go to talk to Maria for the first time. That is right here. Let me know when you are done, please.
If they have medical issues, does it make any difference? Like on them, on placement or?
If we have a child that has certain medical needs, depending on the severity of the medical needs, that may limit the foster parents willing to take that child in. Sometimes they're like, if I'm going to take it out of this situation. If we have a child that's on the spectrum, and we know the spectrum of autism could be meaning like you don't even know that they have it. Like they might just be a little bit socially awkward and you have no clue that they're on the spectrum. Or you could have that severe nonverbal, non-communicative type. And so we have some foster parents that literally specialize in children with autisms, kind of in a certain part of that range. There are also a lot of foster parents who, when we have the traumatic injuries, the shaken baby syndrome, but the traumatic head injury of a child, one of the things a lot of times they'll need a feeding tube. And so that's a training that both the parents and the foster parents would have to have in order to take care of that child. But then they have to decide, thank you, traumatic brain injury. Thank you, Lori. The words were not coming to my brain tonight. They have to go through that training, and they might not be able to do that. It's very intensive. You really have to just, they might have 3 or 4 children that they're fostering, or maybe they have 2 children that they're fostering, and then they may have 1 or 2 of their own. They may not be able to put as much time as that child's high medical needs would require. So that can sometimes limit where the child can go.
Okay.
Any other reactions, thoughts, or questions?
Well, obviously her preference would be with the, whatever this, the Valdezes.
Right, the Valdez family. Absolutely. Which makes it really easy for us on the report to put that she would like to be there. Anything else? So we do want to point out something here. The Beckers aren't bad, but we've got a cultural issue going on. And we've got a 16-year-old who's actually pretty adamant that that's not her church, that she wants to go to her church. A little more unusual, but it can happen.
I was going to ask about that when it comes to religion.
Mm-hmm.
How does that work? Are they forced to go to another church?
And I will tell you, that's a case-by-case basis. So if we have a child, so let me pick on my town for a second. If we have a child in Junction City, right? And they're placed in Junction City, and their church is in Junction City, but a couple blocks away. You can bet that Acasa or the judge, if the child brings it to everybody's attention in whatever way, they're going to work on making arrangements, or have the parents drop, or have the foster parents drop them off, pick them up after mass, etc. For that reason. However, if we have a child who has a case in Junction City or in Geary County, as it were, and they are placed in Wichita, there's no way that we're going to be able to make an arrangement to have that child attend their home church. Now, what I will tell you is what I do see in the courtroom is we have great judges, and they will, again, if it's brought to their attention, they will talk to the foster family, or they'll talk to the caseworkers and say, hey, is there some kind of arrangement that can be made so that this child could at least be in a church of the same faith? However, no, if people aren't aware, the foster parents could potentially bring the children to whatever church they attend, or synagogue, or whatever religious ceremony that they practice. I say church just because we're talking about the Roman Catholic Church here in this one. But it could be like a Jewish synagogue, or it could be there's so many different faiths, and there are so many different ways to practice. So great question, though. Great question. And that's why I love this case, because we get to talk about stuff like that. Especially since this is obviously part of Maria's culture. This is important to her. This is part of who she thinks she sees herself as. This is part of her. It's a part of her that is important. So if it's important to her, it becomes important to us. Okay. Any other questions?
Do we put in the report that she says that the daughter in the foster home is mean?
I would say maybe. Not the answer I know you want to hear. I know you want to hear a yes or a no, but what I really can't always give a definitive yes or no. So I would say in this one, like, I can't visually like picture, but like I get who this character is in the play. You know what I mean? I don't know what she looks like, but I picture her as that, stereotypical, bouncy, flirty cheerleader, which I hate because I'm friends with cheerleaders. So like they were great people, but like, that antagonist in that high school movie. This is how I picture Susan. She's sneaking around. Everybody thinks she's all that. I think if this is the first time we're seeing Maria, I don't know that I'm going to include it in my report, but I am going to make a note of it in my notes. If this continues to be something ongoing, yeah, I wouldn't be afraid to put CASA advocate is concerned that the relationship between Maria and the Susan Becker, and then in parentheses, the daughter of the foster family or placement's daughter, are having some issues. And sometimes that kind of stuff can happen. And one of the things that we can recommend is some family therapy, especially if the foster family has children and there's some issues going on. Yeah, I would definitely say that there have been times where we've recommended some family therapy to help with that adjustment of moving in suddenly 3 kids, and I don't want to paint Susan in a horrible light either. She's also 16, and now we don't know if this is the first foster family that they've taken, or if she's used to it, but suddenly she's invaded by 3 people who are taking a ton of attention. And then you've got one, okay, so she would have been 1. So one's going to be a 4-year-old, and then one was 6. So she's going to be a 9-year-old. And then they've got a 16-year-old. That's a lot of adjustment too. So don't be afraid to recommend some kind of family therapy to help them adjust if there's some issues. I think if it's ongoing though, I'm definitely going to put it in there as a concern. Okay, who would we like to speak to next? We can talk to the guidance counselor, the foster parents, or the maternal aunt. Lori says the foster parents.
Yeah, I was gonna say foster parents.
Okay. Anybody else? I guess we're gonna go talk to the foster parents. So that would be. Okay, and this one, if you're reading it on the screen, let me know when to flip the page.
Can you flip now?
Absolutely. Okay. Thoughts, questions, concerns, responses.
My first thought was that they have a lot of concerns they're bringing up about Maria, and they're not necessarily asking the CASA for advice, or it just all seems to be like in a negative outlook around Maria.
Yep. Yeah, there's not a lot of conversation happening at this point. But we can cut them a little slack. It's their first visit there. So they might be just trying to, hey, somebody's here and will actually listen, because I don't know that caseworker actually listened. They're so busy trying to close the case. But yeah, that is concerning.
I feel like
one-
they're making a lot of assumptions. Like they're assuming that birth control belongs to Maria. It very well could belong to their own daughter. And then, the scandal with the Catholic Church and that she's possibly getting a better message in their church. I just feel like it's a lot of assumptions and speculations on their part.
Lori, you're
And they
my
haven't
favorite
bothered
person.
talking to her. That's what bothers me, is they haven't taken the time to really talk to Maria.
Yeah, you're my favorite person for the next 60 seconds. I would tell my kids the same thing. They would only be my favorite for 60 seconds, but not everybody picks up on that. We don't know who that birth control came from. We know that Susan likes to walk around after everybody's gone to bed. How do we know that she's not trying to make Maria look bad? And if it is Maria's, there's more than one reason to have birth control. So yeah, they are making assumptions, and there's definitely some judgment coming in on like our church is better because we haven't had scandals.
They haven't been caught in their scandals.
Well, that's true too. Like they're, and they may not have any scandals, but they may
Well,
not have
that's
been caught in their scandals. You know, like there's both possibilities. Let's not, but yeah, there's a lot. I always find it funny that the dad is so stereotypical in this, and the little one is so cute. She's in kindergarten, first grade. First grade, she's just adorable. I'm like, you are completely clued out.
And even if those are Maria's birth control, she's being responsible if she's being sexually active.
I mean, I'm not going to condemn her for that either. You know, it might not be hers. There's a
But it's probably
wide
not
variety
hers.
of reasons. Like
Yeah.
we don't know. But yeah, I can picture it like they lean in and they start whispering, and we found birth control. You know, and it's like I picture this as it's happening, and I'm like shaking my head going, and people, and if it was a boy and they found condoms, and somebody could have handed them to him. They might be your sons. He could have gotten them at school. He might be using them. Isn't it better that he uses them? Yeah. There's a lot there. So it doesn't matter that it's the, Maria, or if it's a boy or anything like that. There's so many things. Okay. Anything else before we go to the next one? Okay. Guidance counselor at school, maternal aunt. I would recommend those before we open up anymore.
The guidance counselor.
All right. Nashawn says the guidance counselor. Here we go. I think this one has 2 pages, so let me know.
Okay, can you go to the next page?
Nope, that's it. It was it. I just wanted to make sure.
Okay.
So, reactions, thoughts, comments.
I'm sad for Maria. Her own foster parents don't understand how unhappy she is. Or maybe
Yeah, I
they
hate
just
that
want
for
to
her.
want to accept it,
That's almost due for him someday. And she's struggling with being ungrateful. She's unhappy, but I can feel her struggle. She appreciates everything that she's got, but she's hurt at the same time, and that has to be very isolating.
I need a couple more weeks. We gotta get a couple.
So
I need one good last.
Others?
So I finish out.
Anything else?
I think also too, her being placed with someone who's not familiar with her culture makes a difference too.
Yeah.
I can kind of relate to that growing up and being biracial.
Mhm.
People not understanding the cultural differences.
Yeah, well, and especially those in the culture, my understanding from friends that are biracial is that they weren't really 100% accepted by either side.
Biracial crap.
So again,
Well, they have to.
I'm sorry, Nishan, what?
Sorry, nothing.
Oh, okay. So yeah, that's a huge challenge and definitely something I want to make sure that she needs some therapy. She needs some help with this. This is big stuff. I am thankful that the guidance counselor is there for her. And as for the grades, I don't want anybody to freak out too much that she's got a 2.8 on a 4-point scale, because we know that she spent the last 3 years bouncing from place to place, so her education wouldn't have been at the top notch at that point. And then we don't know how much school she lost during all the situations with her parents. It's not uncommon for kids that are in homes with domestic violence to miss more school. All right. Would you like to speak to the maternal aunt or the Valdez family?
Maternal aunt.
Okay. Let me get us down there. All right, the maternal aunt is here now. I'm going to say, go ahead and read this. Keep in mind, this is a phone call. Thoughts, reactions, comments?
Exactly what I said earlier,
Mm-hmm.
and which she wants her to come and help to be beneficial to her, not to be beneficial to Maria. So that bothers me a lot.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Anybody else have anything?
Well, it kind of ruins it on the church thing that she's seeing her parents there
Mm-hmm.
and she's not supposed to be. But is that, I mean,
Hold that question.
okay.
Anybody else? Because I'll dive into it in a minute. I just don't want to stop you all from anything else you want to bring up first. All right, let's go into that. So when parental rights are terminated, it doesn't necessarily mean they can never see their parents again. Okay. Especially in a situation like this. So no, they can't make any decisions about her. They can't take her overnight. Her parents can't take her overnight or anything like that. However, if she is someplace, if they're both happen to be at a party or a church or a concert on the green, they both went to the fireworks on the 4th of July and they happen to see each other, it's not illegal.
Okay.
She can say hi to them. They can say hi to her. whoever is overseeing her. And as a 16-year-old, she could be at a store, she could be at a Walmart or something and happen to run into them because they go to the same Walmart. It's okay. Termination of parental rights does not mean a no contact order. Now, there are times where, in extreme cases, when we terminate parental rights, the judge may put a no contact or an order of protection in, especially if we have a situation where maybe the parents were sex trafficking the child or labor trafficking the child, and they're really concerned about that. Then we would have a violation. Then it would be a big deal. But in this kind, and most of the termination of parental rights, it's up, your parental rights could be terminated, but whoever adopts that child could make the decision that they wanted to not, maybe the parents had additions with issues with drug addiction, right? And then they get clean and they want to potentially see the child. Well, that's up to the new parents, so to speak. Or even up to the court if they haven't been adopted. And the other thing is once the child turns 18, you can't stop it anyway, unless there's that police protective or that protective order in their place, that no contact order. So that is not as big of a deal. I agree with Nishan. This is definitely, the aunt seems like she cares about the aunt, and that I don't know that Maria is really going to have much of a future if she's going to spend her whole life taking care of the house and the children. So, okay. Valdez family or back to Maria?
Valdez family.
Anybody else? Yep. Okay. Okay, so what I will tell you is the Spanish translation on this is pretty good. There's a couple places where it's slightly different, but not that different. And in this case, their daughter, Lourdes, is translating. You as a CASA volunteer would not have another family member translating. We will talk about how you would overcome a language issue after you read this, but I just want, before you even go in here, you would not have another family member translating on your behalf, okay? All right, go ahead and read. Okay. Reactions, questions, concerns?
Well, I'm confused because they say Maria's aunt was married to my father's cousin, and Maria's aunt said her and her sister married brothers. So that would make them kin. So they kind of messed that up.
Yeah, they did. And that's why earlier I was like, they're if we go by the cousins, like the family of the cousins, they're kind of in the US, we're going to consider that probably non-related kin because it gets too far out. But if this really was an aunt and uncle, that's different.
Yeah, I see.
Anybody else?
Well, one thing I see or sense is that with the age difference between the girls, the siblings,
Mm-hmm.
there's such an age difference. I mean, Maria is going one direction, and the other two girls, they're not in their, well, with the Valdezes, that would be, they would have more of their culture, but unless they're in some type of setting like that, they're just going to lose each other. I mean, until the girls get old enough that they can maintain a relationship. But those little girls,
Right.
they're just going to lose it. Unless Maria wants to keep it up and she has the maturity to do that. So, I mean, I hate to say it, but maybe somebody needs to, Maria needs some therapy or counseling or something so that she can recognize this. But
Yes. Yes. Barbara, I agree 100%. Absolutely. And it's tough with that age difference. It's absolutely tough with that age difference. You're right. Let's look at a couple of things here. This is the first time we learn from them that our equivalent of DCF or the contract agency, TFI, KVC, St. Francis, whomever it is in your area, potentially looked at this as a placement. Now, what I will tell you is this is before the federal Family First legislation came in, which would have given much more weight to a kinship type placement. So we do need to consider that this was written a few years ago, but we don't know what happened. They don't know what happened after that. That's always very interesting to me. We don't know what happened. Why didn't they? Especially when Maria was bouncing from group home to transition center for girls to group home to foster home to foster home to group home. That's a lot. Okay.
But the caseworker said they're undocumented.
Right. But again, we could have potentially said, okay, well, we need to place them here temporarily and then help that family get documentation.
Oh, okay.
Because that, I mean, I know it was the dad in that case, but like that's literally something. Oh, shoot, I meant to mention that. Okay. Let's jump back to talking about the maternal aunt for a second. One of the things I wanted to do when I talked about that case that had the mom and dad was the undocumented, he was the one that was in the country, quote unquote, illegally. We had, we were looking at trying to reintegrate with, I said, the maternal grandparents. But because we were delayed, because of the federal government and trying to renew the green card. Now, she had never had a problem renewing her green card several times over that 30 plus years, but we didn't know it was going to happen this time. Like, all of a sudden there could have been a hiccup. So one of the things that happened was the judge had to consider whether we could temporarily place the child under that interstate compact of the placement of children because they were from the Southeast and we're in Kansas. And it was decided that we could not. And the reason we could not was because the grandmother could potentially take that child whose parents are currently the parent is currently the state of Kansas, and then take that child to Mexico, and then we would have no jurisdiction to be able to try and get that child back because we do not have an interstate compact on the placement of children in other countries. So that is one of those things too. They would never have been able to temporarily place Maria with her maternal aunt in El Salvador because there's no way to get the child back if the child's unsafe or needs to come back. So the only time they would be able to place with a family member there, and I will tell you, I love Judge Segarra. She's since retired, but she's She's still one of my favorite judges ever. She's like, I am not taking one of my Kansas children and putting them in another country where I can't make sure they're okay. Like, I don't know these people even on paper. Like, I need to make sure that she'll be okay. And she was just at it, and like it wasn't and the funny thing is Judge Segura herself, her family is from Puerto Rico and Mexico and Central America. So she was very much a person who got it. Like, it wasn't that that they were bad people, or she was xenophobic or anything like that, but she just didn't know them, and she wasn't comfortable placing one of her Kansas children outside. She wanted some legal mechanism in place to be able to protect the child if needed, until the child's permanency was established. And so I would tell you that in this case, there's no way they would have been able to place as a placement Maria with the maternal law. Okay. I am going to bring this up here. So one of the reasons why they may not have placed Maria with the Valdez family is there might not have been enough room, or the family might not have made enough money. It might have been too much for them. But the rules are, so in a foster family, you have to have so much space, and once they reach a certain age, they have to have their own room and their own bed and all these other requirements. But when we move into kinship, the requirements are a lot looser. When we reintegrate at home with the parents, the requirements are a lot looser. We can get away with 2 kids sharing a room, even if they're of the age we're in foster care, they'd each have to have their own room. And while we may think it's unusual, maybe the parents are sleeping on the couch in the living room because they only have a 2-bedroom place. They need one for the girls and one for the boys. They may have 3 girls in one room and 2 boys in another room, and it's a 2-bedroom house, and you get 5 kids and a parent, and the parents sleeping on the couch. We can reintegrate in situations like that, but that would never go in a foster family. So it might have been at this time, remember, we didn't have the family first. So it might have been that they still have to meet certain standards. Like, you can't have teen boys and girls in the same room, even when you're integrating with the parent or in a kinship placement. And so it might have been that the house was too small. There might have been that they didn't have enough money, that they couldn't afford to feed her. Or all 3 of them. There are a lot of reasons. And then we also have the fact that they're undocumented on top of everything else. So the thing that bothers me, again, I know Lisa's being cranky with this one, forgive me, but like, the caseworker never even reached out and said, hey, here's what the issue is. In 3 years, potentially this family could have become documented, or said, oh, well, maybe we need to rent a bigger place so that we can make it, or whatnot. So something to consider. All right, let's go ahead and do our second visit with Maria. Here we go. Okay. Responses, questions, comments, concerns?
I just feel really bad for her. like, like no matter what, she can't catch a break.
Yeah.
Like no matter how you look at it, no matter what you try to do or whatever you would try to think about it, she just can't catch a break from either side. And it seems like to me, she's having to put out more than she's getting. And it's like somebody's wanting something from her, but they're not giving her anything.
Yep. Yeah.
So we don't need to tell about her seeing her parents because it's not a problem, she said.
No.
And then I was the one that was going to pick up meds, so I need to learn about buying the phone card. They said up to $50 or something
A
you could
year.
a year you could spend. I don't think it's the volunteer's responsibility, but also on the other hand, I don't think it would be wrong, would it?
So here's what I would say. Hold the money in your bag, Cheryl. But don't be afraid to put that in as a recommendation.
Okay.
Because the judge could order the contract agency. I'm just gonna say St. Francis because it's St. Francis for me, okay? It might be KVC or TFI for you all. They can sometimes order that it happens on occasion. It wouldn't be like an every day or every week thing.
Sure.
International calls are not as expensive as they once were. I speak from experience. So yeah, and here's the other thing, talking about international phone calls. That phone call, we would never, we don't have the expectation that any of our CASA volunteers are going to be making international phone calls to try and help with a situation like this. That's one where we probably would have said, hey, if you really want to, go ahead and email or something like that. But if you did, it was absolutely essential that you made it. That's one where the office needs to help.
Yeah.
And then keep in mind that $50 is our program. Your program might be different.
Okay.
Yeah, poor Maria. I am glad she has the guidance counselor though, man, because like if she didn't, I can't imagine how much worse it would be for her. Okay, let's talk a couple of other things that I thought about that I didn't mention at the time. So I know the foster family, the Beckers, were very concerned about, well, first of all, the birth control we find out is Maria's, but not because she's having sex necessarily. But even if she was, you know, I don't know. And I guess I have this, like, did you find it or were you looking for something element to it? But when Mr. Becker made the comment about boys and that they were drinking beer and there's always a party going on over there, first of all, my youngest child, my son, when he was younger, he used to love to ask for like IBC root beers for Christmas and birthday and stuff, because he would peel the label and the IBCs come in the bottles that look like a beer bottle, and he would think he was all that and a bag of potato chips when he would peel that label off and make it look like he was drinking beer. Now, we as the family all knew that it was root beer inside and there was nothing alcoholic in it, but like, because I have a son who at the age of 25 still does stuff like that, I just was like, well, and then the other thing is we're not, the Beckers, I don't think understand the sense of culture of the Hispanic family. Sundays are a big deal. Everybody comes in. It's like a party. I mean, they are very, very, family oriented, and like the whole family gathers, and that means people in the community too that that are part of the extended family type of thing. So Oh, I forgot to mention those two things when we were talking about the Beckers. It's a different culture, so they're judging it as like it's a party scene, and maybe it is. Maybe I'm way off base, but we at least need to be open to the possibility that it's something else. Okay. Now that we've done that part, I'm going to go back as soon as I figure out where I'm going. Here we go. All right, so now everybody should go back and you should see the Amarillo case study. So we're not walking away from this case completely. We're gonna still talk about it. A couple of things. Maria should have already been documented and had her green card by now. That would have been the agency's job to be working on that. However, if she doesn't have her green card by the time she's 18, she could potentially she would get kicked out pretty quickly. And that means like if sometimes these kids, they're like, they graduate in May and then they turn 18 in June, or they turn 18 in March and they graduate in May. It would mean she might not even be able to graduate from high school because of immigration and how it works. And that's where having that SIJS, which I'm gonna flip the slide to real quick. The special immigrant juvenile status, it provides immigrant visas for special immigrant juveniles from the employment base. Okay. The requirements: they have to be under 21. They have to be living in the US. They have to be unmarried. They have to be a dependent of the court or a state agency. They cannot be reunified with their parent due to any of the following. So these are the reasons why they have to be a dependent of the court or state. And part of that is they can't be reunified because abuse, abandonment, neglect, or a similar basis under the state law. And it's not so it has to be one of those, and it has to not be in their best interest to return to the country of nationality. Now, for Maria, we could always make the argument as a CASA volunteer that it is definitely not in Maria's best interest to go back to El Salvador. She does not know the culture as much as she does here. She does not, her brother died from the diabetes. And she has diabetes, although it's managed here. There's a potential health risk going back there. There's a lot of things that you could make the argument that it's not in her best interest to return. Now, the other thing that I will say is Maria was thinking on the end that we just learned that she's potentially thinking of joining the military. Unfortunately, somebody would have to break the news to her that that is not an option when you have diabetes. That pretty much precludes you, especially a severe diabetes, would preclude you from joining the military. However, what I will tell you is, let's say she didn't have diabetes, okay? Let's say that she was perfectly healthy. Maria could actually enlist in the military, even though she's not a U.S. citizen. Now, not a lot of people realize this, but there is a percentage of our active duty military across the branches that are not U.S. citizens, but they are active duty and serving our country that way. I know that that's surprising to a lot of people. It's one of the things that I get a lot of feedback on at the end, that people are like, I didn't know that. A lot of times our some of the interpreters that they will come over and they will become active duty. They sign a contract and they enlist and they do it and they live in the United States. They're not U.S. citizens. Some people just want to serve the country that they're living in. And so they join the U.S. military and they serve the U.S. military, even though they're not U.S. citizens. So if she was healthy, that would be a good way for her to stay. And then again, the military could potentially help her get her citizenship at the appropriate time. Okay. I've done tons of talking. So we're gonna look at this. So let's chat. What would be the outcome for Maria if she had remained in foster care until aging out, but didn't have help navigating through the systems? I mean, obviously, I think she would have been alone. I mean, she's doing a lot, like Deshawn said, she's doing a lot of this on her own. She's just got the guidance counselor. She's kind of just doing what people tell her to do, but she's not feeling like she's heard. She's not feeling like she matters. She actually said she felt like the caseworker had it out for her and didn't like her. But let's change this question a little bit. What would be the outcome for Maria if she was kicked out of the country at the age of 18? With regard to any one of these: education, housing, mental health, employment, finances. So what do we think it would be like for Maria if she was 18 and kicked out of the US and went back to El Salvador? What do we think it would be like for her with regard to education, housing, mental health, employment, money, etc.?
I don't think many of her needs would be getting met. I think she'd be helping run the household and take care of children.
Mm-hmm. I would agree. She's not, it doesn't seem like she'll be able to add to her education. We don't know if she would graduate from high school or not. The only place she could potentially live is with this aunt that wants her to be a maid and take care and nanny. What's that like for her to be in a totally different culture and not have the opportunity to come back? When she's down there, can she work? Or is she going to be too busy taking care of her aunt's household? And then what's her money going to be like? Is she going to be able to leave the house? Is she going to be able to earn money so that eventually she could leave and do something on her own? Okay, changing it up. Let's say that you got this case earlier and you're like, no caseworker, no court. And I'm saying that as in, no, you can't do that. We need to make sure she gets documented. She gets her green card, right? Potentially her citizenship, because she's been here for 10 years. So what does her education, housing, mental health, employment, and finances look like then? If she's got a green card, even if she ages out of the system.
She can work.
You can work. She'll at least have a high school diploma. If she ages out of the system in the state of Kansas, she'll also have college, in-state tuition, and all expenses paid, basically. All the fees are paid, housing is paid, the meal plan is paid. There's like one or two very small things that they don't get paid if you age out in the state of Kansas.
Does that include like health insurance as well? Does the state provide that for them too?
Up to the age of 26, unless they get a job that provides better insurance.
Nice.
They'll also help with one big time expense, whether that is like they'll help find housing or like a vehicle, and she'll have a driver's license and those kind of things as well. What's her job situation? Well, she's got a high school diploma at the very least, potentially a college diploma, which means she's going to be much better off than basically the equivalent of someone who didn't finish high school. So it becomes challenging, but when we advocate, Maria's a really good example, again, why I love this case, a really good example of there's a lot of moving parts in this one. But we want to see, like, if she can stay here, she can get the therapy that she needs. She can get help her caseworker can help her potentially get a job, or, you know, her education and different things like that. There's a lot of things that we need to be thinking about with these older youth. All right, we're not having time to do that one. Does anybody have any questions? All right. So next week is our last week. And when I send out the pre-work, which I'm going to actually work on tonight, but it might not still go out till tomorrow. It depends on if I've gotten an interruption or not. And poor Alex lost her power in the middle of this, so she's had power issues the past couple of days. She got almost to the end both times, and then she was like, ah. But one of the things that you're going to be doing is you're going to go through the pre-work, and then you are going to write a court report and a monthly report and for next week. So keep in mind, you'll have everything that you do on pre-work, and it's on there. I do a video where I tell you this, but I just want you to know, I really do need that court report and that pre-work. Excuse me, not the pre-work. I need that court report and monthly report by Monday morning, because I'm going to, we're gonna praise and give constructive criticism for everybody. And so I have to be able to take that. And then I always take your names out of it. Although it's kind of funny because people are like, nope, that was me. I just thought I should do it like this. And I'm always like, you know, I just don't want anybody, I'm not trying to point out your mistakes. I'm trying to help you write a better court report and better advocate for the children. And so it will be really important that that gets done in a way that I have the time to go ahead and get it transposed over into slides for us to work with next week. Okay. Lori, you asked a great question. She said, are we supposed to be setting up time to observe court hearings? Yes. Reach out to your local CASA program to set up court observation. That your court observation. And then the other thing that you should be doing with them at some point, whether now or after you finish this next week, you should be setting up, you have to spend at least 4 hours with your local CASA program for them to give you specifics on their program. They're going to go over their monthly report and their court report. I always teach to ours with this new format. I couldn't do what I had done in the past and like, okay, here's this one, here's this program's report, and here's this program's report, and here's this program's report. I had to go with one. And so I did ours. So go ahead, make sure you're getting your court observation set up, and make sure you are setting up that time to go over the local rules for your local program. And the local, everybody's going to do things a little bit different. Like I have my $50 thing that the board set in stone a long time ago. And maybe we need to revisit that, especially with the prices of everything right now. So other questions? That was a good question. All right. Well, I will see you all. The good news is, regardless of what happens next week, as long as I have internet connection, we'll be able to go and we'll be able to get this finished. So I'm going to stop the share real quick, and I will say thank you for joining me, and I hope you all have a wonderful week. Obviously, if you have any questions, please reach out. I will say that I am in director's training in Wichita the rest of this week, so it might be a delay, although I will have my laptop up and I will be working while I'm doing training as well. So, all right, that being said, have a great week, and I will see you all later.
Bye.
Bye, Nishan.